On the evening of December 29, 1986, a California Highway Patrol officer named Craig Pyer drove his cruiser down Interstate 15 in San Diego, California. With him was an NBC News reporter and there was a cameraman. They were filming a segment about highway travel safety that was set to air on the evening news later that night. Officer Pyer was following his typical patrol route. They passed by a sign that said Mercy Road and said that's where they found the body. A little more than 36 hours earlier, at around 4 a.m. the previous morning, a 20-year-old college student named Kara Knott had been found strangled to death in a creek right near the Mercy Road exit. And so this was actually why the California Highway Patrol and NBC News were collaborating on this news segment, because Kara's killer was still not caught. And so the idea behind this segment was basically to tell drivers along this highway like how to stay safe while they were out there. And as they filmed, he began talking about the basics of highway travel safety. Specifically, he said one of the most hazardous things that can happen to you is if you have some sort of car trouble that forces you to stop on the highway. There's an inclination for a lot of people to want to leave their vehicle, but that's a very dangerous thing to do. Officer Pyer noticed there was a car pulled over on the shoulder of the highway with its hazards on, so he turned to the news crew and basically said, look, here's a chance for us to actually show the people in real time what to do. Officer Pyer asked the driver to get out and talk to him. The driver said he had run out of gas and then he had left his car and walked to a gas station to get a gas can, came all the way back, he put the gas into his car, but his car still wouldn't start. And so on camera, he basically says to this guy, do you understand how dangerous it is? And the driver just kind of looked at him and shrugged like, yeah, I guess so. After that, Officer Pyer called the man a tow truck and they carried on. That evening, Officer Pyer was in front of a TV as the broadcast started. And when it was over, Officer Pyer clicked off the TV and didn't think much about it. But there were a few people that noticed something. And within an hour of this clip airing on TV, those few people were calling the police in droves to tell them, we know what happened to Kara Knott. It would turn out what happened to Kara had almost happened to over 24 other women. On the night of Kara's murder, December 27, 1986, she pulled off Interstate 15 on the Mercy Road exit and she came to a stop in that cul-de-sac. And that's where she encountered her killer. The other 24 women who encountered the same person, the killer, they were terrorized, but eventually were let go. But Kara wasn't. During her encounter, the killer clubbed her over the head and then strangled her to death with a rope. And some of those women who had survived their attack, they're watching the segment and suddenly their attacker is on TV. And they're thinking, I bet they killed this girl. And on top of that, they can see there's a fresh cut over their eye. And sure enough, the police would follow up on these tips and they would confirm that the man in the video with the cut over his eyebrow was Kara's killer. And Kara's killer was none other than Officer Craig Pyer. Officer Pyer was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Since being incarcerated, he has gone up for parole 2 separate times and been rejected both times. However, he is up for parole again in 2027.